Test, test.
Hi, Tiffany.
Or that could be Paul Wagaman. I don't know.
Can you hear me?
If I unmute, does that help?
Yeah.
Oh, you can hear me now. Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Tiffany.
Yeah.
Who is that? Is that who said, can you hear me?
My name's
Karen.
Paul.
Karen, okay.
That was a weird echo.
Yeah,
Usually that happens. People are like in the same room or something.
yeah, we'll put everyone on mute, and then once we all get on, we'll put everyone on mute.
Yeah.
Connie, you there?
Whoa.
Paul, your video isn't on either. I don't know if you want it on or not, but
My video's not on because that computer doesn't have it.
Okay.
And I'm
Cool.
trying to get to another computer that does have it, but it's,
Yeah.
anyhow.
Is Connie, you on?
Anybody hear me all right?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, I heard you.
yep.
Tiffany, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you, Karen.
Thanks.
Is 1253 something 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 531 Paul Wagaman or is that something else?
That's me. I'm on the phone, but I can also see you guys.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
We haven't heard from Connie though. Are you on, Connie?
Connie is on and she's unmuted if she wants to say something.
Hmm.
Okay, Nancy is not going to be able to make it. And I'm going to put myself on mute because I need to contact Jeff Gum, who was going to be making a presentation here. I'm going to have to call him on my cell. So I'm here, but you won't hear me for a minute.
Hey, Connie, can you hear me?
Hey, Don, this is Dave. I think Connie is on. She's a non-video participant, but she may have just stepped away.
Okay, yeah, I can't hear her. I see
Yeah.
her name. So, for the, for Paul Wagaman and Connie, since the process is going to be, if you had a question, just to hold your hand up like this, and then I could acknowledge you, and then you can unmute yourself and talk. But for Paul, you're basically going to say Mr. Commissioner, and Connie just say Commissioner, Daniels, and then we'll address you that way.
Okay,
All right?
I'm trying to get on with a video here.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
Okay, that's all right. We got,
That's why we had 15 minutes to get started.
yeah, Connie.
All right, sorry, everybody.
No, that's all right.
So Dave, you're on for Jeff, okay? Sorry.
Hey, I'm going to leave
I'm
the
gonna
meeting on
unmute
one
Dave just
computer.
so I can hear his tone of voice. I saw him say, okay.
Testing. This is Dave Buer, who's
Yeah,
going to give a presentation on Consolidated Plan, but may not know enough.
that's all right.
So he's going to ad lib.
Welcome, Paul.
Tiffany, I'm going to step away for just a moment. I'll be right back.
I still can't get anything from Connie.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me again?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Connie is unmuted. I'm not sure why she's not able to. She has her hand up.
She does?
I lowered her hand.
Did you admit her to the meeting like what I was in earlier?
No, she came in as a panelist. You came in as an attendee for some reason. I had to change you to a panelist. So I'm
Oh,
not
okay.
going on with Connie.
He said 11 people are on.
Yeah, we've got a, let's see, who's this attendee? Jeff, yay. Hi,
Well,
Jeff.
Paul Bochi.
Mr. Boki is on.
I'm on. I don't see myself though.
You should be able to turn on your video, Paul.
Yeah, on the top of the screen.
Oh, okay, right there. All right.
There you are.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Connie, are you able to turn on a video at all of yourself? We cannot hear you if you're talking.
Is anybody making their iPad work?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
What do you mean?
Did you load the app?
Did we what, Paul?
Did you load the app?
Oh, not on the city iPad. I don't think
No.
I can. I don't think I have permission to.
No.
Yeah, I can't. I'm trying to get my city iPad and I can't do it because I can't load the app.
Right.
Yeah. Correct.
So are you guys not having access to the PDF and things that were sent to you?
Well,
Uh,
you can't do it on our iPad, the thing you sent to us, because we don't have the app. We don't have the Zoom app on our laptops or iPads.
Aha.
No, we got the stuff you sent.
yeah, we have all about our agenda and the whole meeting on our iPads.
Yeah.
But Paul says we don't have access to download or do anything else on our iPads.
Which is
Got
correct.
it. So you may have two laptops in front of you right now, or your phone and your laptop?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. All right, well, it is 6:30.
Okay.
Get started.
Yep, we will.
All right.
So we'll call the meeting of the Planning Commission to order this April 29th, 2020. And if staff could call roll.
Don Daniels,
Here.
James Guerrero,
Here.
Nancy Hudson Eccles is excused, Ryan Pearson,
Here.
Paul Wegeman,
Present.
and Connie Coleman Lackady is here, but muted somehow. You have quorum.
Okay, thank you. If you, all the rest, if you could put your microphones on mute so we don't hear background noise, we appreciate it. Until I call for an approval, but now we're looking for approval of minutes of March 4th, 2020. So I'm looking for a motion, so you can unmute now.
Motion to approve the minutes as written.
Okay. Mr.
Second.
Pearson and Mr. Wegeman second. Any discussion or changes? Hearing no changes or discussion, we'll call all those in favor by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Did I hear Guerrero?
Yep.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Hearing none at this time, we'll call the meeting, the minutes of March 4th, 2020 approved as written. Do we have any changes to our agenda tonight by staff?
Mr. Chair, we request that you would move item under new business, the 5-year consolidated plan and annual action plan up to following public comment, please.
Okay, great, thank you. So now we'll have a public comment, and due to the Proclamation 20/25 by Governor Inslee, all comments have to be submitted to staff within 6 hours of our meeting today. And has any written comments been submitted to the city under public comment?
You should have, as a planning commission, received an email today or 2 emails today from Karen Devereaux, which included several public comments. They all refer or relate to some of the comprehensive plan amendments that are being discussed tonight.
Okay,
One was for 2020-04 and some have come in regarding 2020-05.
Okay.
Reminder to the commission, you did close public hearing. So these are comments coming to you just to see them as they are. And if you wanted to actually take them into account as part of the public hearing record, you'd have to do some action to get there.
Right. Correct. So those are the only topics that were submitted under for public comment.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions from fellow commissioners in regards to that? Seeing or hearing no one at this time, we'll close the public comment then at this particular time. And then we'll go right to number 8 of the review of the Cdbg 5-year Consolidated Plan and Annual Action Report.
Good evening, Commission members. Again, this is Dave Buer, the Community Economic Development Director. This
Hey, Dave.
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Buer, we've got some feedback with you. Do you have both your phone and your computer on? Can you mute something that might be on as well as your computer?
Everything should be, my phone's turned off.
Okay, maybe all the rest of us could mute and see if that helps.
Is that better?
There might be something like near your speaker that's causing it to vibrate or do something weird. Or your mic, rather.
Is that better? No. Hold on.
Thanks for your patience, everybody. And Dave, just so you know, Jeff Gum is on his way into the meeting, so if you'd like him to take over, he'll be here shortly to do so.
Better.
Okay.
No.
So Jeff, you should be available or able to, there you come. There you are. Excellent. We're ready.
I have no idea why my thing would not log on. I literally entered that path. I know them by heart at this point in time.
Well, we're ready for you to make your presentation, so go ahead.
All right. Now I have to find my presentation. Just one quick second and I'll share my screen with you guys. There we go. Slideshow from the beginning. Escape. Let me get back to where I was. And share screen. And hopefully you guys will see my screen here in a second once I bring it back up. All right, are you guys able to see what's on my screen, hopefully? Now I went to mute.
No, we cannot see it, Jeff.
That's
See
obnoxious.
if I need to do something.
We may have to, yeah, use yours. Let's see. I clicked share screen. Oh, it says host disabled participant screen.
Shoot. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to go ahead and open up my screen to
That'll work.
move this along. So you know what page we need to be in? Would you like to go directly to your planning
Presentation.
PowerPoint?
Sure.
Okay. Give me 1 second and it'll be up.
Should be the same one I did for council study session. So Paul, this will be a repeat for you. All right. So I guess I'll give you guys a quick background on where we're at. You guys can hear me, I'm assuming.
Yes.
All right. So before you tonight, I wanted to go through Lakewood's Consolidated Plan. It's the 5-year plan we're looking at for 2020 to 2025. The Consolidated Plan is specific to CDBG and home funds, as well as NSP. This year, we've got additional funds that we're getting CDBG COVID-19 funding. They're not in this Consolidated Plan, but we're doing them as an amendment, and as we get those back, assuming that we do, they'll become part of the plan. So specifically, a 5-year plan is kind of a package for HUD where we tell them what we see in our community, what we see as the greatest needs, so housing, economic development, community development, those types of things. We look at demographics in the city of Lakewood. We look at low-income populations, concentrations, all types of things from the city. Determine how we can impact low-income communities, low-income individuals, and allocate funds for CDBG and home to meet those needs. So the 5-year plan consists of, it's a bunch of different things. So there's a consultation and citizen participation process, which is kind of where we're at now. It consists of a housing and homeless needs assessment that's in the 5-year plan as well. A housing market analysis. There's assessment of economic and employment conditions, available resources that we intend to spend over the next 5 years. So the CDBG and home funds that were allocated. And in addition to any public funds, general funds, anything else that we would be looking to spend. The 5-year strategic plan is included in it, and an annual action plan. So it's kind of a big plan that says, here's where we're going in 5 years. And then there's also at the very end of it, there's a section that talks about where we're going over the next year. So it does a 2020 as well as a big picture. So to go through the slides here, the first slide kind of goes to we can skip this one. It's kind of what I did. It talks about where we're at. So the consolidated planning schedule that we're on, this was probably the weirdest year for CDBG I think I've ever seen. And COVID-19, I mean, it's different for everybody with everything. So what used to be our very nice December through May timeline is a little bit off, and it's a little bit delayed. So what we did is in December and January through February, it was actually pretty good. So the needs analysis, the market surveys, and all of those were completed by our consultant enterprise partners out of Washington, DC. So they came in and did the backbone basically for the 5-year plan. In February, they discussed with us and our staff kind of how we wanted to align the needs that they were seeing in the community with the funding, and then we developed the goals and strategies and the action plan to move forward. So that's kind of where we're at. We're in the March and April. We're actually in the April phase now. So we've put the plan together. We've gotten it out to the citizens via Facebook, the city website, Tacoma's plan as well as on Facebook and the website, on the city website. And we're going through our 30-day comment period. So right now, comment period is April 18th through May 18th. We are having a public hearing on May 18th in front of the city council. And again, that's just to solicit citizens' input as to, are we on the right path and what do they think? You guys, as a planning commission, come in from the perspective of obviously the planning side. You guys kind of know what's going on in the city, and you guys have an inside track to what you see as the Lakewood needs. So it's important to bring it to this board as well as the Community Services Advisory Board and bounce it off you all to see if we're kind of going down the right track, see if you can, I don't know, maybe you see something that we don't see in the process, and kind of get feedback from you all. So May onward with the plan, we're looking to adopt this plan on June 1st. Tacoma's looking to adopt theirs, I think, on June 2nd or June 9th, depending on how the schedule works. The next slide, if you would. The next one. So this will go through the needs and the market analysis. This kind of goes through the meat of the analysis that was done. So what we've seen when the surveys came back and when the review of HUD data, I guess I should tell you, all the information that is in this plan is as current as we can get. We're using HUD data that goes back to either the 2010 census, because we haven't finished the new one, and or American Community Surveys. And a lot of the American Community Surveys, I believe the most current one would be through about 2017. So it's a 5-year, what would that be? 2015 through, or sorry, 2015 through 2020. The problem is we're back in 2017, so it's not as timely as it could be, but it's reasonably updated. So what we've seen in the city of Lakewood is we have a reasonably large, severely cost burdened population. So populations that pay 50% or more on their income or rent. Renter households is kind of the big thing that we're seeing. So you have a fairly large population that is cost burdened. 68% of those households earn 30% or less of area median income. And then 26% earn between 30 and 50%. The rest would be 80% or lower to be area median income. And you've got 6,824 cost burdened renter households that are paying 31 to 50% of their income on rent. You can see the numbers. It's what we have seen, or at least what I've seen from the report, is you have this reasonable large population of renters that are cost burdened. And about 1/3 of that, it's about 1,065, somewhere in that ballpark, of owner occupied units that are cost burdened. So what we're seeing is a high renter household number of cost burdened households, which isn't anything that we haven't seen in years past, but it's starting to get a little bit more concentrated. As rents go up in the city of Lakewood, we're seeing these numbers increase. So the next slide. Again, you've got housing with cost burden that are unfortunately low income renters, obviously are going to be disproportionately impacted. The thing that I thought jumped out at me probably the most in the entire report is the single elderly households. You've got 94% of single elderly households this is Tacoma and Lakewood, because it's a joint plan, experience cost burden and they earn less than 80% of AMI. So I mean, you've got kind of a double whammy for low income single elderly households. It's something that I hadn't seen before, and I didn't expect it in this plan as well. Move on to the next one. So here's the homeowner's cost burden. You've got 1,064 of single family homeowner occupied units that are severely cost burdened. And you've got 28% earn 30% or less, which is significantly lower than the number we saw for the rental household. So the income for homeowner occupied units is actually a little bit higher. 31% earn 30 to 50% basically, and 23 up to 80%. So again, what we're seeing is there are a number of owner occupied units that are cost burdened, but it doesn't meet the number that we're seeing for renter occupied units. So the next slide. Overcrowding, it's what we see as probably our biggest problem in the city of Lakewood. It's low-income households with children clearly are the most impacted with overcrowding. Number of units where you've got 2 or 3 bedrooms and you've got households with 4 and 5 and 6 family members in there. So you've got multiple kids in multiple bedrooms. So what we've seen is 79% of renter households are overcrowded for 80% are AMI households. And you've got a fairly large chunk, 0 to 30% AMI, 33% of those have households with children who are experiencing overcrowding. And then you've got another number, 46% in the middle to upper range, up to 80% are also experiencing overcrowding. So it's a fairly substantial number, not something that I like to see increasing. It's a little bit higher than it was last time, but not significantly higher. The next slide. So one thing that HUD looks at is multiple incidences or multiple problems. So you've got things like cost burden housing. You've got cost burden housing that has insufficient utilities, so they don't have water, they don't have power, they don't have certain things. There's a number of housing problems, and Lakewood, what we tend to find is most of the people who have multiple housing problems tend to be minority categories. So you've got Pacific Islanders, American Indians, African Americans. Those are typically the households that we see that have multiple housing problems, and a lot of them are substandard housing, and a lot of them are cost burden households. They've got low incomes and fairly high rent ratios. And I guess one of the stats I put on there was 60% of Pacific Islanders. There's not a lot in the city of Lakewood, but they are experiencing a housing problem where you've got a huge need for Pacific Islanders, where they're actually finding units that are affordable and not cost burdened and decent to live in. So next slide. For the most part, I mean, I kind of went through this one with the last thing. So you've got American Indians, and you've got Native Americans and Alaskan Natives that do have multiple problems, and they are reported at a greater proportion than they are for single family white households. And you've got, again, the Pacific Islanders kind of jumped out. When you've got households that are earning up to 80%, those have obviously been impacted more. There's a 39% of the high rate households reporting one or more housing problems. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you've got 40% of a single ethnicity that's got multiple housing problems, that starts to jump out at you. Next slide. Again, a lot of these are just kind of reinforcing what we're seeing for some of the minorities where they're impacted with severe housing problems. So you've got Alaskan Natives and American Indians at this income level that have a lot of household problems. 30 to 50, I forgot what the last one was, 35%. Yeah, there's no one race or ethnicity at threshold. A lot of this is just, I mean, it's the only way to describe it is what I've seen. There's a map. I'll go to it at the very end of the presentation that I thought was kind of interesting in the actual consolidated plan, but there's a map that shows the categories of ethnicities and minorities and the concentrations. And it's kind of interesting seeing where some of the Native American populations, some of the Hispanic populations, and some of the Black and African American populations are all kind of concentrated in small areas. And those small areas that they're concentrated in tend to be kind of some of the lower end apartment complexes, some of the ones that are in greater need for improvements and investments, at least from what I've seen through the rental housing program. I'm seeing a lot of those units needing to a lot of improvement. So some of these slides are kind of corresponding to what I'm seeing with the rental side. Next slide. Trying not to take up too much time here. There we go. So Lakewood housing market. Whoa, one back one. Lakewood housing market. Some of this you guys have probably seen. So the median home value in the city of Lakewood is $232,600. And again, this goes back to the 2017 American Community Survey. So it's a little old. We're actually a little higher than that. And then you can see the median cost with a mortgage, without a mortgage, and gross median rent is in Lakewood $926 in 17. It's considerably higher than that now. Some of the units I was in this weekend, actually this weekend, I was in yesterday. There's 1 and 2 bedrooms. I was in 15 or 20 units yesterday. And the gross rent in these units was about $1,500 or $1,600 for 2-bedroom units. And they were in horrendous condition. So it's something that is an issue in Lakewood. We're seeing rents go up. I don't foresee any change in that. Rents are going up, house values, everything's going up, and incomes are kind of stagnating. Unfortunately, with the COVID-19, we're going to see a bigger depression of incomes and impact on low-income communities, especially those who if they were already cost burdened to start with, and now they're out of work, I mean, it's going to get really bad for some of these populations, especially some of the minority populations. Median household in the city of Lakewood is 47,636. That is considerably lower than the state average. That's also lower than Tacoma and Pierce County. It's significantly lower than the state average. So those are some things that we see in the city of Lakewood that are a little bit lower than statewide. Next slide. There we go. Housing costs in Lakewood obviously are lower than Pierce County and Washington State, but that also corresponds to some of the issues where we've got, not only have you got lower incomes, you've got lower housing costs, you've got lower incomes. So that does tend to cause an issue for the city of Lakewood. Again, there was in 2015, Washington Housing Needs Assessment did a survey, and they were pointing to the rising housing costs that they had seen. Unfortunately, that's an old survey. It was 2020 to 2012, but they saw a significant jump in those 12 years of $663 to $951. So you're looking at, what is that, nearly a 50% rent increase in a 12-year period. That's not really a sustainable thing, especially for low-income individuals. Those numbers are increasing exponentially as they go on as well. So I mean, when you get into the 2017, we're looking at $943 for rent. Washington, as a state, is looking for $1,100 for an average rent. So I mean, we're seeing the numbers continuing to increase and wages continuing to kind of stagnate for low-income households. Next slide. Again, you've got the Lakewood with the homeowner occupied house values and so forth that are lower. They've increased substantially. Again, you're looking at 2017 numbers. So you've gone from a number that was 2017 of $272,000, and now we're significantly higher with the $286,800. So it's not a good trend, and some of the things that the survey pointed out. You've got the median earnings for males. What we had seen, and what it's kind of historic for most cities that you see, it's pretty consistent. You see male earners earning more than female earners. That's something that's consistent in Lakewood. It's consistent all the way across the state. In Lakewood, though, what we do see is the median income is substantially lower than other communities is. So that's something that's an important factor to consider when we're expending our funds. Who we're impacting. The lower income communities in the city of Lakewood tend to be lower income, even so, than the state averages. So, next slide. This is kind of what I was going to go over, that slide I was telling you back, and we'll have to find it when we get to the end. So what we've seen in the city of Lakewood is the racially or ethnically concentrated areas of poverty. So the last time we did this plan, we had one census tract. It was a 71806. That was a racially ethnically concentrated area. And if I don't have the map in front of me, but 71806 is Springbrook, I believe. So what's happened is, in the last American Community Survey, there was additional, unfortunately, 3 census tracts that had been added as racially concentrated ethnic areas. So 71704 is in it's kind of where the Air Force Base, the landing strip is. They're kind of in the industrial park. There are not a lot of houses in that area. So it's not a big impact that we would see, but the 71805 and 71807 are kind of in the Lake City neighborhood. So it's all along I-5 in the southeast area of Lakewood. So the concentrations of minority populations we're seeing is further concentrating in that area. Next slide. Again, this just goes over, and I don't really want to go into great detail and go talk about it much, but it talks about those census tracts. And I think you all are reasonably familiar with the Lake City Census Tracts and the Springbrook Census Tracts. They tend to be high rent occupied census tracts. They tend to be older buildings in those communities. The houses in those neighborhoods tend to be smaller, older housing as well. So there's a reason why some of the minorities and some of the low income are concentrating in those areas. They're a little bit more affordable than some of the other neighborhoods are. Next slide. And the strategic plan. So as I kind of mentioned, Lakewood and Tacoma are part of a consortium. So we put together a 5-year strategic plan together. So Lakewood does our strategic plan, Tacoma does their strategic plan. The reason that we're in a plan together is Lakewood isn't quite big enough to get home funds on our own. So we're in a consortium with Tacoma, so they allow us to qualify for home funding. So were we not doing that, Lakewood would just be getting the Cdbg funds and no home funds. So it gets us about another $300,000 a year to be in a consortium with the city of Lakewood. So again, each year we both put our plans together. Lakewood does our annual action plan. We figure out what's unique to the city of Lakewood, what we need to focus on, what we can make an impact on. Tacoma kind of does the same thing. I wish we had their funding source because they get over $1 million in Cdbg and we get about a third of what they get. So, and they have a huge home allocation. So it'd be nice to have some of Tacoma's funding sources, or funding levels, but we don't. So that kind of goes through some of the things. I'm not certain, I'm trying not to waste a lot of your guys' time, but the specific things that a 5-year plan does, there's 4 categories for community development block grant and home. There's housing. So you can do things like development of new housing, rehab. You can do debt servicing for constructions. You can do gap financing. There's all kinds of things you can do for housing to get the developments into your community. Community development is another category that we can do. So you can do things like roads, sidewalks, street lighting, those types of things in low-income neighborhoods, or for a project that's specific to a low-income housing development or something along those lines. Economic development, one of the things that we're looking at doing with our COVID funding that we're getting, we were allocated $350,611. This coming Monday, we're bringing to council a plan for business assistance. So we're looking to assist businesses impacted by the COVID-19 stay-at-home orders, basically, for businesses. So in the city of Lakewood, we're looking to help businesses with 10 or fewer employees, potential a grant or a loan program. That's something that council has yet to decide. So we're taking it back to them and see what they want to do. But $350,000, unfortunately, isn't going to help a lot of businesses. Probably 25 to 30 businesses, somewhere in that ballpark, depending on how much time it takes to administer the program and so forth. And then the final category, back to where we are, was public services. So public services, I mean, it is exactly what it sounds like. You can do job training. You can provide funds to food banks. You can provide funds to organizations that are providing services to individuals. So domestic violence programs, children's programs, pretty much anything for low-income individuals. Next plan or next slide. So in the 2015, you can skip this one. That's what we did, unless you guys want to know. That's what we did over the last 5-year plan. It's not too exciting. So the 20 to 24, this is kind of, let's look ahead. So what we're looking to do in there we go, that works. So the kind of what HUD looks at is, again, you're looking at priority needs to address, which the plan is trying to develop. Here's the priority needs that we see in the city of Lakewood. So what we're seeing based on the consultant's plan put together and the data that we've gotten is housing instability, including homelessness. There's a limited supply of diverse rental homeownership opportunities. I mean, that's unfortunate for most communities right now. There's a need for accessible culturally competent services. So services that benefit low-income individuals, especially minorities and non-speaking English populations. And then another priority need would be need for safe, accessible homes and facilities. So the construction of new housing, construction of rental housing. And then the priority populations, that it's fairly consistent every year. It's extremely low income, very low income households, immigrants, seniors, people of colors, minorities, disabled individuals, and homeless individuals. So that tends to run through every consolidated planning cycle. The next slide will get us to where we're at with our funding, where we're proposing to go over the next 5 years. So over the next 5 years, Lakewood is proposing, there's a number of goals, funding sources, outcomes, and who's doing what. So it kind of shows Tacoma and Lakewood. Again, it's part of a 5-year plan. And some of Lakewood's numbers look really small when you compare them with Tacoma, which isn't so good, but that's the way they go. So stabilizing existing residents. In the next 5 years, what we're looking to do is use Community Development Block Grant and Neighborhood Stabilization Program funds. The city has about $250,000 in what I call NSP funds. The NSP funds we use for dangerous building abatements, and we do, I don't know, the city does about 25 to 30 dangerous building abatements a year. Cdbg, the NSP fund usually funds between 3 and 5 of those a year. So it's typically that we're spending $150,000 to $200,000 a year on those projects. So we expect that to continue. The NSP in the middle would fund the 10 to 12 blighted properties. Cdbg, we're looking to have 5 jobs created or retained, 3 businesses assisted. I guess it does kind of behoove to jump back here for a second. The jobs created and the businesses assisted, this does not include the COVID-19 funding. This plan was put together before any of that was done. We were given an option to run our COVID-19 funding out as quickly as we could by putting into the old 5-year plan. So we amended the old 5-year plan. So we're actually going to assist a whole lot of businesses in the year 2020, but they're going to be reported in last year's plan that was part of last year's 5-year plan. So it's some of it's kind of strange that it's not in here, but over the next 5 years, we do anticipate assisting additional businesses. 36 jobs created or retained, and 2 to 3 businesses is what Tacoma is looking to do. So, I mean, they have a giant amount of funds versus us. And the other thing that we look to stabilize 50 households. So we do things like housing rehabilitation with our money, owner-occupied housing rehab. We do things like emergency assistance for displaced residents. So we spend Cdbg dollars for low-income individuals that are displaced through no fault of their own. So if you have a building closure, some of those things, we're assisting those types of people. In increasing diverse rental and homeownership opportunities. So those are looking to be spent with home and Cdbg dollars. And typically those are our home projects, and home projects developed by Habitat and or Homeownership Center or other nonprofits. We do right now a lot of housing construction, new housing construction with Habitat. I believe in the last, I'm trying to think of what we did in the last 2 years. It's typically between 3 and 8 homes a year that Habitat's developing for us right now. They're coming in the next funding cycle for a fairly large development in the Tillicum neighborhood, fairly large for Habitat, I guess, for the city of Lakewood. They're going to develop 8 houses in Tillicum on a couple of properties that we had blight that we removed a few years ago. So kind of a nice project. So that's in the 20 household number that we're looking to create. Prevent and reducing homelessness. Lakewood is looking to assist 25 households in the next 5 years. Again, that's through emergency rental assistance. We're looking to increase I hate this thing, I can never say this, availability of accessible culturally competent services. I can't say that. So that's something that we're going to use Cdbg dollars for, and that's typically, we use administrative fund dollars, and we use them for Fair Housing Center of Washington. They'll typically come in and do some fair housing presentations for us, and they'll provide information for renters and landlords on landlord tenant act and certain things. So that's one of the things that we look to do, amongst other things that we do for low income. One of the things that we're going to do in the next 5 years, you can see, would be supporting infrastructure and public improvements. Typically, we have funded street sidewalks, street lighting improvements, those types of things. In the next 5 years, I do know that Public Works has hopes of developing some additional street lighting in the very north end of the city of Lakewood. So up in the Oak Brook area, there's some low-income neighborhoods or block groups that we can work in those neighborhoods to install some street lighting, as well as potentially road developments kind of in the Springbrook neighborhood between 123rd and 47th. I think it's 47th. So down there, that in the last year and a half, the city of Lakewood invested about $600,000 to develop to build the 123rd Street connection from Bridgeport to 47th. And we look to do some improvements and extensions of that road. And then the city of Lakewood doesn't do any urgent community needs. Tacoma at this point in time doesn't have anything as well. Next slide, if you would. So this kind of shows you the expected resources that we're looking to expend over the next 5 years. The city of Lakewood's annual allocation is $596,006. That's about an 8% increase from last year. We do expect to have about $100,000 of program income this year. And we do expect to have there's about $85,000 of unexpected funds that we're going to reprogram. So in 2020, City of Lakewood's looking to allocate $781,000 in change. Over the remaining 5 years, we anticipate about $500,000 coming in a year. So there's about $2 million that we look to expend in the next 5 years. Home, we're looking at a current annual allocation of $331,627, a slight increase from last year, 4 or 5%. There is some program income. So when we have program income, typically those are homeowner loans that we've made for rehab, and the homeowners are either paying us back in monthly payments or they've paid us back in the entirety when they refinanced. So those are typical numbers that we see every year. So in home, we're looking to allocate about $382,000, $1.3 million over the next 5 years. And then NSP is simply a program income generation. So all of the abatements that we do, we get paid back usually within a 3-year cycle. We roll those funds back into new abatement programs. So we're looking at $265,000 over the next year and $350,000 over the next 5. Next slide is the end. So the one thing, I don't know if Tiffany could bring it up. The slide that I thought was interesting is in the Consolidated Plan itself. Do you have that one, Tiffany?
Yeah, do you know a page number within the packet?
It's at the very back of the I've lost it, the 5-year Consolidated Plan. It's in the appendix, and you could literally scroll all the way to the bottom. I think it's like, you're getting closer. Almost. Oh, hold on. I see where you're in the impediments to fair housing.
Yes.
Back up. It's probably like page, I wish I could guess at it. I don't remember. It's like 194. I don't remember what it was.
Okay. What's the topic?
It's a little dot matrix map of all the minority concentrations of population.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you're right in the ballpark. It's
that one.
Nope, up higher. There you go. That's the one.
All right.
That thing, especially when you blow it up and you look at it really closely, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I mean, you can see the map of Lakewood, and when you're looking at the low income populations, the concentration that we see kind of along I-5 and along the Lake City neighborhood all the way into Springbrook. I mean, that's really where all the minority populations of Lakewood have tended to congregate. A huge portion of the Hispanic population is there. There's some up in the north of the city of Lakewood, but not as concentrated as they are kind of in the south and the east. There's a large Black or African American population in both of those, as well as some of the Native population. So it's kind of interesting that's kind of where the minorities have congregated in the city of Lakewood. And it's one of the things that HUD tries to kind of mitigate when we're allocating funding over a 5-year cycle, and you're developing housing or you're developing programs to benefit low-income individuals. You're trying to clearly spread that concentration out. So you don't want to have large groups of minorities and large groups of low-income populations in some of the what tends to be kind of the lower income areas, the lower developed areas, some of the areas that have some of the lesser amenities. There's not as many sidewalks in some of those neighborhoods. There's not as much access to public transportation. I mean, HUD kind of looks at that and says, hey, what can we do to kind of smooth this out and move these populations all throughout the city of Lakewood? So I thought that was an interesting map. And the other thing that was interesting was there's in Tillicum, I was kind of shocked when you look at the Tillicum and Woodbrook neighborhoods. The minority populations have kind of left those areas. I mean, I'm not seeing what we used to see in the past. So it's kind of an interesting shift.
Okay, does any other commissioners have any questions for Jeff at this time? And you did a great job, Jeff.
I do, Don.
Oh, Mr. Wagaman.
When we looked at the first set of your presentation, you were talking about individual communities or people groups that have, like, I think you said about 300 families or something of those kind of problems. And then when you got to the end of your presentation, you were talking about helping maybe 20 families. Are we even making a dent? I guess would be my question.
Yeah, I mean, we are slowly, but it's the hard thing is we get $500,000 a year in Cdbg funding. We get $300,000 in home funding. We used to get twice that. I mean, we were at 980, I think, at our peak for Cdbg and 600,000 for home. So what we're seeing is clearly funding levels going down at the same time as housing costs, land costs, all of that is going up. We're making a dent. It's a very slow dent. What we have done and what I think we do really well is focus on single family housing development. We do it really well with Habitat. We've done it really well with Homeownership Center. We go into communities that have a lot of blight, a lot of distressed properties, dangerous properties, abate those properties. And that we then have Habitat buy those through the county when they're foreclosed and redevelop those properties. So it is something that keeps the costs down. We've been really good at. And what I'm seeing, or at least what I have seen, and I think the Tillicum neighborhood is kind of the poster child, at least for Habitat's development and the improvements that you can see. I mean, is we've built 39 to 40 houses right now in the Tillicum neighborhood. You've seen dramatic increases in the student populations of the Tillicum Elementary. You've seen what used to be transient populations in and out of there. You see a lot of families in there now. It's interesting seeing over a 10-year period of investment in the Tillicum neighborhood, the changes. I think we can make changes, or I think we can make improvements in other neighborhoods moving forward. The thing with limited funding is continuing to kind of focus on a problem or a set of problems and continue to do that over a number of years. So if one year we're going to try to develop affordable housing in one neighborhood, and the next year we're going to do economic development, and the next year I'm going to do roads somewhere else, yeah, it does make it hard to see much of an impact. So if you can kind of focus your funding and target an area and hit it really hard over a long period, I think that's a really good approach.
Next question. You put up there, you made the comment, you have more than one person in a bedroom. Should there be one bedroom for every person in the house, or is two people to a bedroom? Is that okay? How do you decide that?
HUD has decided that anything over 1.5 people per bedroom is considered overcrowding. It's a HUD construct. So if you've got more than that on average, they consider it overcrowded.
Well, and then my last question, you put up a number there. It said median income for Lakewood 48. Does that include their benefits too, or is that just their take-home pay?
That is just that's gross income basically. So whatever your AGI is, it doesn't include benefits.
Okay, so benefits would be maybe another 20K?
Depending on the population group, yeah. For a lot of the low-income populations, there's clearly lower benefit packages available to most of those. I mean, they're in service-related industries, and time off and benefits tend to be lower in those populations.
You know, and I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but you know, I mean, with the state looking like they're going to be about $3 or $4 billion short, that's going to have a serious impact. You know, certainly in the school district, we got some concerns. You know, and you know, the school district's a big employer at this point in time. You know, and I'm not saying we're talking layoffs or any of those kind of things, but you know, what do we do? What you're working on and what you're briefing us on today, you know, not trying to be a doom and gloomer, but it doesn't look real optimistic for the next year or so from what I'm seeing here at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, that's all the communities are being impacted throughout the United States. I mean, one of the things that we're doing this year that we haven't done before would be or at least we're proposing to do, would be a home tenant-based rental assistance program. So we can use home dollars to assist low-income households afford rent. And in this case, one of the things that I pointed out, I mean, we've got a huge percentage of single elderly households that are rent burdened. So that would be one of the populations we would seek to assist, as well as minorities, anybody who's low income that would qualify. So that's one of the things we're looking to do. The Economic Development Loan Program is another thing to assist businesses in Lakewood, especially businesses that are looking to lay off employees so we can keep them working and keep incomes up for households.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wagaman. Anyone else have questions? Seeing none, I thank you, Jeff, for that presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
All right, great. Tiffany, next on our agenda is the update to the Lakewood Station District Sub-Area Plan.
Sure, and so I'm gonna really quickly go down to the end of your packet and then share my screen again, because it sounds like you guys are having to jump back and forth, and I'm trying to avoid that, so.
No problem.
1 second. Okay. All right, are you able to see that?
Yep.
Okay. So very quickly, as you are aware, because you got, I think, at least one presentation on this before last fall, we are in the middle of creating a new sub-area plan within the city of Lakewood, and it's being called the Lakewood Station District Sub-Area. You see this small map here on the screen right now. The yellow, the gold is the one that's for the downtown sub-area that was approved by City Council in October of 2018. And then the red, if you'll recall, we had a conversation about potential changes to this map compared to what was originally adopted and is in the current comprehensive plan. That's a different shape. It goes down below I-5 and it doesn't have this tail off to the east that goes up to the 512 interchange. But in any event, this is now the map that the City Council has directed be used for the planning process. We are in the middle of various beginning public outreach. We did have a stakeholder retreat on February 28th, and it was a targeted retreat, meaning it wasn't for the general public, and specific individuals and organizations were invited. We had public transit, we had utilities, we had neighborhood association representative, and then developers and landowners within the sub-area. And the questions that were asked of those folks in attendance were, what is the status quo? What do you want to see? What do you think can or cannot happen within this area through sub-area planning? And it was a very fruitful presentation. It was worth everybody's while, and I think it has given Burke a great head start on its drafts of the plan that the public will then be seeing later this year. We do have a website that's live, lakewoodstation.org, and that's getting updated regularly as new information becomes available, new events are scheduled, etc. We are adjusting the way we're going to do public input because of COVID-19. And so as of now, we're getting ready to do the initial outreach via hard mailing, a postcard or something that's going to direct people to online resources. There's also going to be a survey that's going to be circulated in multiple languages within the sub-area in order to help target and make sure the vision and the priorities for that area within the population's mind is the same, or maybe it has changed, and we want to document that, to what was originally included in that 20-year-old now vision in the comprehensive plan. We'll also be doing in-person things as COVID-19 protocols are relaxed, but we just don't know exactly when that may happen. So far, there have been a couple of things delivered per the contract with Department of Commerce, and they were attached to your packet starting on the page following what I'm showing right now. A situational assessment, meaning what's the status quo in the area, the existing zoning and regulations that are subject to change now through the sub-area planning process. And then a first just very high level discussion about the hybrid form-based code, which will be coming. Like the downtown plan, this is going to have its own chapter within the Lakewood Municipal Code. It's going to also be a form-based code similar to that for the downtown. And there may be some changes in zoning. We don't anticipate a huge major change. Where we see the changes happening is within the development regulations and that hybrid form-based code. There will be changes and easing of some of the unnecessary confusion maybe that traditional codes cause in order to let people maximize their land use and densify both commercial and residential uses to what's allowed within the current zones. So as it sits today, we're in the middle internally of working with Public Works on how to get their best input on roads and how they may change cross sections and what's allowed on certain types of roads going forward. And then, as I mentioned, that mailing is going to go out to the general public. I would anticipate within the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're in the initial design phases for that. So if you were to go down into the next remainder of the packet that you have, it's going to talk about, again, those deliverables that have been provided to Commerce so far. We will be coming back to the Planning Commission on a regular basis for this project. I anticipate within the next couple of months, we'll be able to give you a lot more detail on public attitudes and feedback, given the survey results we'll be gathering. And then hopefully the next time we talk about this, we'll all be in the same room at the same time. So unless there's anything else for this one, I turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for Tiffany on this presentation? Mr. Wagaman?
Donna, I have two. The first one, this district starts just south of the what we've labeled the international district, correct?
The north boundary is 108, and then there's that panhandle that goes off to the right. Let me see if I can pull this up again for you real quick.
It looks like it goes right up to 512, but the international district would be just north of that, correct?
Okay, I think you're correct, yes.
Is there any thoughts then with this new area? We're going to put some signage in, calling it the it's the
Lakewood Station sub area.
Yeah, we're going to put some signage on that then.
I would think it'll probably be part of what's talked about in terms of the street design. And Dave, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Can you hear me okay?
No.
As far as signage, I think it's a little yeah.
It was working good when you, before we started.
I don't know what's going on. We can get back to you on the question of signage, but the fact is that it's a little premature to talk about that at the moment. We have a lot more other issues on the plate, but we can talk about visioning and outreach and what the signs might look like as we get further into the plan.
Great. Any
We
other
are,
questions? Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Tiffany.
Well, just very quickly, as we do the public outreach, we are making sure we do it in multiple languages. So
Mhm.
process goes forward, we hope to get meaningful input from those that may not speak English as their primary language.
Great. Any other questions, Mr. Wagaman?
No, Don, thank you.
You got it. Okay. Hearing or seeing no other questions, thank you, Tiffany, on that update, and look forward to the progress moving forward. So we go back to number 6, our unfinished business, discussion about the 2020 comprehensive plan and zoning map amendments, our docket and the public testimony that we heard a couple weeks ago, or a few weeks. And so we'll turn it back over to Tiffany then.
Thank you. And I'll show it just briefly, and then I'm going to jump over to a PowerPoint. But you do have this also in your packet for this evening. And it starts on page 6 of the large packet. But quickly, in the time since your public hearing, which was a while ago now, there was public comment received, if you'll recall, and most of it dealt with a single application. It was 2020-05, and it was talking about Stillicum and 59th, that area of the city. And so what we have done within what you're about to hear from me and then talk about yourself is, first of all, change recommendation for 2020-05, that specific application. There was also a realization on staff's part that application 2020-07 is its new number. It was a single parcel down in the south, almost west of the city. You'll see it on a map. Actually should not be considered in this package. It is a site-specific rezone, so that should be removed, and it'll be handled on its own separately. And then in addition to that, what was originally 13 applications, we've gone ahead and combined some. If you remember, originally there were 3 or 4 that all dealt with rail policies within the comprehensive plan. There were 2 or 3 that referred to the Springbrook area. And so we did some cleanup in terms of just the organization of the applications. And we're down now to 9 total. There's 2 text amendments and 7 map amendments. Where we sit in terms of timing, and even this is incorrect as you see in the packet, but where we are tonight on April 29th is you are looking at what's now an updated recommendation from staff regarding all of the proposed amendments. You're going to talk about them tonight, maybe start to formulate some potential amendments. And then a week from tonight is when you're scheduled to take action. As always, if for any reason you feel you're not ready to take action on May 6th, then certainly the schedule can change. But tentatively, we've got you taking action on May 6th. And then this would go forward to the City Council on May 26th, which happens to be the day that you guys are doing your joint Council and Planning Commission study session. And then the council will take it up from there. Underneath that schedule that you see on the screen, the discussion begins. There are 4 basic questions based on the Lakewood Municipal Code that have to be answered in order for the City Council to ultimately take action on comprehensive plan amendments. And you see the first one there on the bottom of page 6 of the packet. Is it consistent with other plan elements or development regulations? And if not, are there amendments that will make it consistent? Secondly, are the amendments consistent with the goals of the comprehensive plan? Is it consistent with the countywide planning policies? And then does it comply with GMA overall? And then following that, you'll see a summarized table of all of these newly numbered amendments. So number 1 is the PDDs. If you remember, there's a whole new bunch of language about that in several titles. There's a new policy under the land use section of the comprehensive plan. And that whole amendment is included in your packet. Number 2 is to a private application. And it's amending some property along Custer and Bridgeport. The recommendation from the city staff is to not go with the originally applied for, high density multifamily, but to go with multifamily instead, and to rezone multifamily 2 rather than multifamily 3. Number 3 is another Bridgeport and Custer. This is a scrivener change where once upon a time, the zone was changed, but the land use designation was not. And so this is just cleaning that up and making sure that they match now. Number 4 is a 111th and Bridgeport Way West area. It's amending from corridor commercial to multifamily and then rezoning to multifamily 3. The recommendation there is approval. Number 5, as I just mentioned, is where there's been the most public attention and comments received. It affects a number of parcels along Stillicum and 59th Avenue West. Originally, the staff had suggested let's rezone this based on city council direction from neighborhood commercial 2 to multifamily 1. Through the public hearing process, pretty much everybody that provided comment was saying, hey, this doesn't quite make sense. I've got an existing business on that corridor, or I'm intending to put a business there. And so what the staff has done over in the right-hand column, you'll see the shaded recommendation, is instead of going to multifamily, take it to arterial corridor with an arterial residential commercial zone. And I'll go into that in a little more detail, but that's an updated recommendation. Number 6, if you remember, is Springbrook Neighborhood. It's the same number by chance that it had last time around. Long story short, we're just about done with the FEMA analysis getting updated and brought into City Council for review. And so the recommendation is to once again hold off on this one until everything's completely done. And so in the 2021 cycle, you'll be able to be fully informed on what the FEMA analysis is and the new floodplain within the city and how that might affect zoning within the Springbrook neighborhood. Number 7 is the one that I mentioned that should have been a site-specific rezone from the start. So staff is recommending that that be removed from the package as it goes forward. The newly numbered number 8 is rezoning the Lakewood Transit Station to be public and semi-public institutional, which is what the function of the building is. And then number 9 is a combination of several other originally submitted applications into one. They all relate to rail policies and they come from City Council direction from when they took a look at this docket. So here is a map, and you've seen this before. Let me see if I can blow it up a bit. But these are where all of the different map amendments are located within the city. Number 2 is up at that Custer and Bridgeport intersection. Number 3 is directly below that. Number 4 is down at 112th, 111th area. Number 5, that weird shaped one, that's the Stillicum and 59th area one where we've gotten, again, the most comment. Number 6 is down below I-5 at the Springbrook area. Number 7 is a single parcel over by Washington Boulevard. And number 8 is the Sound Transit building itself. So now let me go quickly to the chair and see if you have any questions so far. Otherwise, I'll keep going with the PowerPoint.
Any other commissioners have any questions at this time? Yes, Mr. Pearson.
Your guys' recommendation on 2020-02 to change from multifamily 3 to 2, what's the, I guess, big difference there?
It was basically for consistency with the parcels around it. And when we talked to Mr. Guerrero, as well as people that are involved in that project as a developer, it made sense to them anyway, given the density that they were looking to get on the project.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Wagaman, do you have a question?
Yeah. And I don't know if this is the right place to bring this up. We got those last little things from, I'm just trying to think of his name now.
Mr. Ramey?
Yeah, Mr. Ramey. Is that included in any one of these? His
Mr. Ramey's comments are relating to 2020-05. However, he submitted them after the public hearing was closed for the Planning Commission. So I'm not quite sure exactly how the commission could incorporate it into what you're doing. Go ahead, Mr. Buer.
If you wish to incorporate his comments, you would have to come back and redo the public hearing. That will delay this project by at least 21 days. As far as from my position, there is another public hearing before the City Council on the same subject. Mr. Remy will have the opportunity to comment at that point.
Okay, and now could this coronavirus thing, did that cause him to have a problem, or we didn't have the coronavirus when we were doing all that public hearing, I don't think. So no. He should have known to get it in front of us by then, correct? Is that a reasonable?
That's my position. I mean, to submit the comments at the very last, where now the commission is in the debate stage, is something that I think Mr. Remy owns. It's not the city's responsibility if he chooses not to respond timely.
And okay. This was provided in hard copy to property owners there, so I believe he would have received that because it was sent out twice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
great.
Thank you.
All right, so no other questions. And are you, Tiffany, are you going to explain a little bit more on number 5 regarding that ARC?
Yes.
You said you were, okay. I'll wait till.
Trying my technology skills again here. There we go. Hello, we're having a Planning Commission discussion. And here are your applications. Okay, most of this stuff you just heard and saw through the other application, but here we go with 2020-05. This is the one where originally staff had recommended switching from NC2, Neighborhood Commercial 2, to Multifamily 2, and then based on public comment, the updated recommendation is to go with Arterial Residential Commercial. And if you can see on my screen, the various uses here are listed. I'll go through this because it takes a couple pages. But what you see on the 4 columns to the right are what's allowed in Multifamily 1, Multifamily 2, Arterial Residential Commercial, and then the one to the far right is Neighborhood Commercial. So you'll see this is straight out of the new 18A's code and allowed uses within various zones. Mm-hmm. And far right, the NC2 is the current zone, And you'll see a number of permitted or conditional uses that aren't allowed in the other 3. Part of the reason, or the majority of the reason for this application coming forward to you is the city council direction. So there's been this increased awareness and cognizance by council that the city of Lakewood needs to continue to work on additional affordable housing and additional housing units, period, within the boundaries. And so where can residential zoning be encouraged where maybe it's not right now? And this 59th and 6th Silicon Boulevard application is a result of that. So again, you'll see a reduction in the amount of commercial uses being allowed, but additional residential if you were to go to MF2, for instance. ARC, the reason staff is now suggesting that as an alternative is because of the public comment that came through your public hearing, talking about plans for or current uses within the area that actually qualify as commercial rather than residential. So here, this is commercial and industrial, a number of things. One more point to make before I move to the next slide is that for multifamily 1 and multifamily 2, both of these have exactly the same uses in the various zones of the city. The only difference between the 2 is the density. And so if you'll see here, 22 units per acre versus MF2 is 35 units per acre. So other than that, they allow the same uses throughout the zoning and use tables.
And the ARC only allows 15.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. And NC2 is also at 35.
Mm-hmm.
The density allowed for multifamily 2 and NC2 is the same. And then MF1 would be a slightly lower amount, and ARC is even lower than that. ARC requires essentially a mix of uses. So looking here, that's one thing you see. Can you see my pointer?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm pointing right at the P under the ARC zone for mixed use. And that is a big difference between the 2 multifamily zones and ARC, is mixed use is allowed here. That has quite a broad definition within the city's new zoning code. I can certainly pull that up if anybody has the question. Another thing that's different between the residential zones and ARC is you'll see office professional, personal services are allowed, and office business services are also allowed in ARC where they're not in the residential zone. And so the thought behind suggesting ARC as a rezone rather than MF1 was look at these things that would still be allowed along this corridor that people may have been voicing about in the public hearing. In terms of residential uses, I'm sorry, you'll see here now a number of other additional things within MF1 and 2, obviously because they are multi-family zones. But comparing what you can allow there versus what you can allow in ARC or NC2, not a whole lot of difference. So the residential uses really aren't limited. It's more on the commercial side. But one more time, what the city staff is now saying is based on the direction from city council to say, not so much commercial, let's go more residential, balancing that against the public comments received in the hearing. Staff is saying ARC may be an option for the Planning Commission to consider instead. So other than that, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, no problem. That's
I'm
fine.
done.
So on that topic, I think in the public comment, mostly what was discussed or presented to the fellow commissioners was traffic, transportation in that area. And the concern was more condensed housing means more traffic at that particular area. So with the reduction in housing units or per acre, 15 versus 35 or 32, considerable less amount of cars on the road, so to speak, in that area might be a beneficial to those current businesses that are impacted on that spoke to us at public hearing.
So that's where my presentation ends, is just to say this is where we sit with an updated couple of recommendations and combined application numbers. And night for you, either if you want to talk about your potential amendments right now or chew on it and know that next Wednesday is when you're tentatively scheduled to take action. And Mr. Bew and I are here to answer any other questions you may have about the applications and the updated recommendations.
Okay, great. Is there any other questions or any amendments at this particular time from fellow commissioners? Mr. Guerrero? Gonna unmute yourself.
Thank you. So I wanted to talk about that 2020-05. That one's an interesting one. So Claude Remy did send me the information too. I know I don't think we want to make it a formal piece. Specifically though, he is interested in, he owns property there and he was looking at multifamily development. We did hear concerns about traffic, and then we heard concerns about businesses that wanted to develop as they had initially planned to. And so it's kind of I guess I'm trying to figure out exactly what the city council was interested in there. If just to my eye, the NC2 does have a really high allowance for kind of everything. Multifamily, commercial, mixed use, it kind of lets a lot of different things go in there. And the ARC reduces the density by quite a bit and reduces what can go in there by quite a bit. And so if the idea was to maintain density, I think this actually, in my mind, probably lowers density, even though you've taken a bunch of other commercial pieces off the table. At 15 units per acre, you've taken the potential housing down by quite a bit. And so I don't know. I guess I'm questioning what we're trying to do with the change. Is it to respond to the neighborhood businesses saying there's too much density potentially coming, which NC2 would have, it's been this way for a long time, would have allowed a lot? Or I guess I'm not sure what the change, what we're really after for that area.
Mr. Viewer?
Can you hear me okay?
No, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. One of the reasons behind this proposal was the fact that we have lots of strip commercial development in the city of Lakewood. And this is one area that I was tasked with looking at as to what would be a more appropriate use. This is also an area in CT zone in this location where there's been absolutely zero commercial activity except for multifamily development. So the thought was, since we're having such an issue with residential housing anyway, let's remove the NC2 designation and some of the strip commercial aspects behind it and go with straight go with some sort of multifamily zoning. So you had a reaction from some of the people who have property along Stilican Boulevard who do not want to see any change and talk about proposed commercial development, which has not happened, and because of the pandemic, probably won't. And the question the council still has is we have lots of strip commercial development that remains underutilized. So we go through this process, we provide the commission with a recommendation for multifamily. There's the underlying NC2 zone, and based upon some of the comments that were received by the neighborhood, is there something in between? And so based upon our zoning classifications, the ARC was one possibility, which reduces the amount of commercial development, but it also reduces the density down to 15 units per acre, which is 50% less than what the multifamily zoning district would allow. The other option is to go with MF2, which is no commercial development and a higher density at 35 units per acre, which is the same density allowed in the NC2 zone. So you have a mix. You can go a variety of different ways. And from my perspective, the real issue here is the amount of strip commercial development in Lakewood. And I think that's what the city council is attempting to address.
Great, Mr. Guerrero.
So I was scrolling through trying to get to my table there, but the ARC does allow some commercial, would it allow the strip development that we're maybe trying to avoid?
If you go back and take a look, my recollection is that it predominantly allows for a minor amount of retail, but mostly professional office.
Okay, and that area doesn't seem to lend itself really well to office to my eye. I don't know what other people think there. So my initial thought is that the original proposal was to go from NC2 to MF1, which would have reduced density. But if we went from the NC2 to the MF2, they have the exact same density, but that would pretty much curtail new commercial in that area. I think that's maybe more in line with what the council was intending, although I understand that we'll have some business owners that don't like that. So I mean, I think that's probably the discussion that we need to have. I appreciate staff's trying to keep everyone happy with the ARC idea, but that to me almost feels worse than not doing anything. I think if we're really saying let's make this a residential area, MF2 makes sense to me. I'd like to hear what the other commissioners think.
Mr. Wagaman, did you have a question or a comment?
I don't have a question. I'm still trying to understand. I appreciate James bringing it up and Mr. Bure's thoughts on that. You know, what is the right decision? You know, that we're, you know, how do we get there? The thing about the density, I mean, that's one of the problems we have in Lakewood. We need to, you know, cram more people in. So that, I see that as the problem. So if we reduce the density issue, that kind of goes against some of the things you're doing from my perspective. So I'll be interested in what everybody else says before we vote on this one.
Yeah, no problem. And Ryan, did you have any comment?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with staff's, you know, decision here is to kind of mend the two together, allowing some commercial use still, while also, you know, getting some of the density, but reducing some of the, you know, some of the strip commercial uses that wouldn't be allowed in there by having the NC2. So I think it kind of does, you know, mold the two, I guess. It's kind of a weird area. So I don't know. I do agree with James though, as far as the office, but I think that there's what else, I guess, is in there besides the office as far as the mixed use. Because that was like the main, there was like the 3 blocks of.
Yeah, let me just, first of all, I'm sorry, Dave. Mixed use is a project that combines commercial and rental uses. It allows for multiple horizontal and or vertically attached dwelling units. Horizontal or vertical mixed use is then defined. And then you have a commercial use at least 35% of the square footage of a ground floor in multi-story buildings. So that's about.
So the uses themselves are strictly office uses then?
No, they are commercial uses.
I'd have to go back to
if
the
I'm
table.
wrong, please.
Yeah, Mr.
There was only a handful of things that were permitted.
Go ahead, Dave, if you have comment.
As far as existing uses, you do have an existing non-conforming used car lot there on the corner. You have a dilapidated restaurant that the city is close to demolishing. Across the street, you have several office complexes, all of which would be conforming under the ARC zone. You have Mr. Remy's proposed residential development, which is to the, I'll call it to the east. And that's where you see those apartment complexes. Across the street from Mr. Remy's property, you have an old dilapidated commercial building that the city wants to have torn down and replaced. And we've had some potential people look at that over the years, but nothing has moved forward. Across the street from that, you have the middle school, and I believe you have an old plumbing supply business that is currently being used as a contractor's yard, which is right on the edge of skirting the NC2 zoning district. There's a question of whether that's conforming or non-conforming. You have a tattoo parlor. You do have an office complex on further down on Stilichon Boulevard. You have an auto parts store. And I think you have some sort of motel that has been converted into living quarters. And that's my recollection of what is currently there along those street frontages.
And Mr. Pearson, were you asking what is allowed under the new, or to the new potential zone?
Yeah, the ARC, is that just basically the mixed use with the offices is like kind of one of the only commercial type uses?
Yeah, let me share this with everybody and see if we can answer that question. So here you have MF1, MF2, ARC, and then NC2. If you scroll down through this, also allowed in ARC, which is the green, would be catering services, a club, lodge, meeting hall. Then you get down to mixed use and then the office uses we talked about already. And then further down into some of the other types of uses, you'll see care center within schools, daycare centers intermediate or independent, human service agency office, excuse me, medical doctor offices, vacation rentals, babysitting, and then you're into your residential uses.
Okay.
So, yeah, Mr. Guerrero.
Yeah, one thing that jumped out at me, I have that same chart on my other computer here, and personal services are allowed in the ARC also. So between that and office uses, I think you could see strip development of the type that we're thinking of a multi-tenant, smaller multi-tenant buildings that I think we're wanting to discourage.
Yeah, so any other comments as of now? Does the fellow commissioners want to digest a little bit more and then at our next meeting or do you want to make any amendments now? So it's kind of up to you, Mr. Buer.
I would prefer that the commissioners hold off making any recommendations until your next meeting.
Okay, great. I was going to recommend that as well, but I thought I'd better ask before. So seeing or hearing no other comments, we'll have this topic brought before us at our next meeting, and then we'll move forward on all of those recommendations and approval or denial, and we'll go from there. Okay, so thank you, Tiffany. And I guess now we can just move to, there is no public hearing tonight, so we'll cover that. And we'll move to reports from staff first.
No reports other than to say we are meeting again in a week, which is unusually short. So we'll try to get you your packet for next Wednesday as soon as possible based on tonight's meeting. And then just keep a heads up for when we move forward into future meetings, because again, we're still subject to COVID-19 protocols right now. No sure guarantee when that'll end and when big group meetings will be allowed, even if everybody's back at work. So we'll keep playing with this back and forth until we're in back to normal.
Great. So Mr. Boki, you want to have any reports or comments?
Thank you, Chair Daniels. I'll just say a couple of things. That the council got its first look at the Parks Legacy Plan this week, and I think it was received well. There were some comments about some additions and things like that. Very ambitious plan, so we'll see how it goes given our present circumstances. So to also talk about, we ended 2019 in great financial shape. Revenues were better than we had expected and budgeted for, and expense controls were very good. And actually, I think I haven't seen the first quarter report but from what it looks like, actually, most of the first quarter went very well. Of course, we're now in this kind of area of time where we're just waiting for the shoe to drop, right? And that's true of all governments. We'll be clearly adversely affected by the sales tax. We also get gambling revenue and admissions tax. So with both the casinos and the theaters closed, those will be coming in at goose eggs. We've also, over the years, have added a number of hotels. The LTAC has been a very good source of revenue and an important source for all sorts of things to develop our tourism. And that's going to take a hit too, although we've got balances in those funds. So we go into the, waiting with bated breath to see how everything happens and how deep our deficit is going to be. So we should hear, I think the city managers indicated that it'd probably come in next month. We just have to see where those sales tax numbers are coming in. I do want to mention, though, we found out in the last day or two, the governor, so how the COVID, the Congress has passed, I think, 4 different COVID-19 pieces of legislation. The largest one, of course, is the one that Pierce County is receiving in the neighborhood of $158 million. So the way Congress did it is they said, each state gets so much money, and if the entity is over 500,000 people, they get money. But if it's under 500,000, you don't get any money. And you're supposed to look to the states, I guess. And so the state of Washington has now weighed in, and today I have a listing, and I would say this is unofficial, but the governor basically set it up as a $25 per capita. So that would leave the city of Lakewood with $1,790,000 in revenues from the COVID-19 funds. But it's important to understand that the federal government just isn't for anything. And we cannot use these dollars currently to backfill. So these are monies that are going to be COVID related. So think about, these are things like the business assistance program that the federal government has done, the county has done, and the county, I'll tell you, is overwhelmed with applications because the federal system is so overwhelmed that there's tons of small businesses that have not received a dime yet. So the county at their last supplemental budget actually expanded that county-wide. So Lakewood businesses are eligible for that. We'll see if anybody gets any. They're probably going to put more money into that. But now it sounds like we're going to put the Cdbg dollars in. We're going to discuss that next week and, or in the next few weeks. I don't know the exact date of that. And doing our own loan program here in the city of Lakewood. Well, now we have almost $1.8 million to handle other COVID related items. So we could talk about expanding the business loan program. We could talk about rental assistance. We could talk about, and you saw the need earlier, and there's other things, but it has to be COVID related. So it's actually a pretty tight little box on that, but more to come on those things. So if you're small business people, be aware that there is money out there, and there may be more on its way.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Boki? Mr. Wagaman, no questions?
I don't have any questions for Paul. I do have one for Tiffany. Is there anybody in that can look at my iPad and put all the stuff on that we talked about earlier? Is that possible to happen?
I think the only way would be if our IT department were to change permissions or if they would physically upload Zoom onto the iPad. So you can certainly, if you're available and able and willing to do it, come and talk to IT at City Hall. We'd have to plan it every time.
So I can just call in and talk to Karen, and she can put me into them, or what's the best thing?
Karen, do you want to handle that? Karen's on the line. Let's see.
Yeah, Mr. Bueller. Oh, go ahead, Karen.
Are you there?
Yeah.
I guess not.
Okay, Mr. Bueller.
We need to speak with Mr. Tyler Wells from the IT department to make arrangements, and then to have Mr. Wegan bring in his computer for Mr. Wells to take a look at. So we'll have to call you and make arrangements, Paul.
Yeah, this
Okay,
is
thank you.
this is regarding Paul. So we're currently using two, equipment. So we're using our own to Zoom, and then we're having our iPads just for the documentation sent for our agenda and associated documents behind it. That's what we're. So Paul's asking basically, is there a way that we can just use our iPad for everything?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine. IT, when you find out, Paul, and that, we can then pass it on to the fellow commissioners to see if that will be beneficial instead of running two pieces of equipment.
Okay.
We'll try to get that answer for you all tomorrow and send that out to you in terms of scheduling a time to come in if you can with your iPad.
Okay.
Because I have one other problem with my iPad is that my content locker is requiring a password for some darn reason. And I worked with Tyler when I was in Atlanta trying to get that solved. And then we came back and then everything's been upside down. So I haven't got it solved yet.
Technology, wonderful thing. Okay, any other questions for staff or any other comments? So I do have one. I don't know, I think most of you know that Commissioner Weber has turned in a resignation from the Planning Commission. We want to thank him for his service. He's battling some health issues. So due to that, and we wish him the best for recovery and his family. But staff has put out a request for open applications, and that was done 9 days ago or so. So it's open until filled. So I don't know if it's been filled or any applications, but if you know someone or whatever, that would be willing and want to serve as the planning, Mr. Bueller.
2 applications have been received and those have been forwarded to the mayor.
Okay, so I guess they'll make their decision on those 2 applicants.
Or he may ask for more people to apply, so there could be more in the future. I just don't know, but that's what we have for now.
Okay, all right, sounds good. But anyway, I wanted to thank Mr. Weber personally because he did serve well on our commission, and we want to thank him for that, and best of luck for his health to get better. So no question about that.
Hey, Don, would it be
Yes.
would it be possible to? They took pictures of the commission. Is there a chance we could maybe get a picture and all sign it or something, and send it with a get well card or something from the commission to him? He served for a long time.
Yeah, we can ask someone in the staff if we have that copy of those picture, and we can pass it around. I don't know when, since we are all remote. Yes, Mr. Bueller.
How would you feel about a planning commission proclamation?
Hey, there we go. That sounds very good. Any other, all shaking your head that I can see, that sound good? Hey, good. Yeah, if you could work that up, we would definitely appreciate it. I'm not sure if he's out of the hospital or yet. He was in the hospital a few days ago, and so, but there again, even if it's over the technology of our Zoom meetings or whatever, I think we should recognize Mr. Weber for his service.
Hey, Don, I think I saw a Facebook post that he was home.
Okay.
just in passing, I saw a
Yeah.
post. So
Yeah.
that was a couple days ago.
Good. So maybe you can join us on a Zoom meeting and present that proclamation. So, yeah. Okay, hearing no other comments or questions, everything's good. So we'll call the Planning Commission meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Yes.
Yep.